This is a video about clickables. It has 3 tasks. One it calls task 0, and if we click here it'll go to task 1. We click it again, it goes to task 2. We click it again, it goes back to task 0. Well, I'm going to click on program. I told it to take us to subprogram 3 because that's where these 3 tasks are. First it says branch if task is equal to the was task number to AC. That's right down here. It's when the task number changes, it goes through this code. It sets the was task number to task, so next time it goes around they will be equal. Does a clack instruction. Well, that action tells it to take away all clickable areas. Well, since these 3 tasks have different clickable areas, we don't want it to remember the clickable areas from the previous one, because that will mess it up. It'll think I'm clicking for something in the first task when I'm really something in the second task. So we want to remove all clickable areas when we go between the tasks. So that's what clack does. Then we set C to 0. That's for us is going to tell us nothing's been clicked. Then we're going to fill 15 things at matrix A with 0. We're zeroing out a matrix, but then we're setting values in that matrix to 1 to make it an identity matrix. And then after that, this matrix B gets filled with 15 random digits. Now we end up where we would have gone had the task not changed. Sets a tall Y to 28,160, XY position to 20 and 5, a color to a blue-green, and makes a rectangle fill. Then it makes that rectangle clickable as click number 1. This box R means box the rectangle. What rectangle? Well, it uses these control registers to tell it where the rectangle is. Then it adds a little bit to X and a little bit of Y, and the reason for that is it's going to put text into that rectangle. Well, you got to know that the upper left-hand corner of a rectangle is where X and Y are. Well, we don't want to write the text there. We want to write it down into the rectangle and over in a little bit. So we move it over 5 and we move it down 23. So the text is going to be printed in that rectangle. We change the color to black. That's what the text will be printed as, and a font 422. That's bold, 22 points. And then we put the text in there of next task. Then up here we said box that rectangle and make it clickable as number 1. And here we're doing a click, which says if it is not equal to 1, go to this label AE, which is down here. But if it is equal to 1, it's going to add 1 to the task number, and then it's going to mod it with 3. That means that value is always going to be a 0, a 1, or a 2. Because this mod 3 means divide it by 3 and keep the remainder. So the remainder is either going to be 0, 1, or 2. Well, next it comes down here. Let me advance things up a little bit. And now it's going to set X to 200, Y to 30, make the color black, the font 4, 25 points, and do a box N 2 with the task number. Then, given the task number, it's going to branch to either BA, CA, or DA. Well, let's go back there and see what it means, the box 2 task. And we'll execute it. That's this value here after next task. That 1 and that 2, that's it boxed N of 2 digits. I advanced the instructions a little bit. The next one says if the task is equal to 0, go to BA, 1, go to CA, 2, go to DA. Well, we're going to continue on here and go to BA. Well, here it sets, here I'll move the yellow line up there, sets tall wide to 68, 335. That's a pretty wide box. X and Y position to 2080. A color to 310, which is a light brown, and do a rectangle fill. Then it changes the color to 990, which is yellow. Then it adds a little to X and a little to Y again. And it's doing that again in order to get the text that it's going to show down here to be over to the right and down in the box. Again, because the baseline of text is the bottom of the text, whereas the rectangle, it's the upper left-hand corner. Then it sets J to 0, and for I of 0, down to here where it says next I5, one at a time. It's going to go around here 6 times. And each time it goes around, it first boxes 6 characters and gives it a click number of 11 plus I. Well, what 6 characters it's going to box is determined by the font that it's been given. In this case, the font had been given up here as bold 25 points. So down here, when it said the box 6, it's 6 characters of that size. So it's saying that is going to be clickable, and click number is 11 plus the value of I. Well, I starts at 0, so the click numbers are going to be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Here then, right after it does that, it puts the text at that position on the screen, adds 6 to J. Well, each time here is putting 6 characters. For this first 6 characters was 1 plus 3 spaces. Well, the next time it's going to be over 6. It'll be 2 and 3 spaces, and then 3 and just 1 space. So it adds 6 to it each time it goes around this loop. It adds 5 to the value of X. X was already advanced by the 6 characters, but an additional 5 to space them apart. Then it says if I is not equal to 2, go here to BE. But if it is equal to 2, well, then it wants to set X back to the beginning and add 30 to Y. That's because there's 2 rows in the box. Now let's go look at that. I execute it. What it was doing, first of all, was dropping 1 down, because the baseline of 1 is below the upper left-hand corner here. So it dropped it down and moved it over. But also it went 1, 2, 3, and then said, well, now drop down here, and then it'll do 4, 5, and 6 down there. Right? That's what the program was doing. And each time it was making those clickable. Well, let's go to data here, and I've already told it to go to the clickable areas, and here we see area 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. They've all been made clickable. We also see up here area 1 is clickable. That's where we click to get the task number changed. I'll turn data off and we'll go back to the program. Alright, so now we've done this first box it made, and as soon as that is done, it says click C. That action says if something has been clicked, put its value into C. If nothing has been clicked, go to BG, which is down here. If something was clicked, it's going to show it on the status line what was clicked, and then down here it says, well, if C is 0, meaning nothing has been clicked, it goes to BH. But if something has been clicked, it sets XY to 400, 170, and does a box n. That means box numeric, and then it says give it 4 spaces of characters. It is not clickable. That's what this 0 means. Show the value of C. Well, let's go back there. If I click 1, it puts this 11 here. 2, it will be 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. That's how far we've gotten now. I'll go back to the program. Now I'm going to advance it up some. Okay, now I advance it up, so here's the last part we talked about, where it did a box n on C. Then it would go to BH here if C had never been given a value. It's still 0. Then we're going to go to another part here. Now it sets tall and wide, 29, 110. That's a much smaller box than that big brown box up there. Then it sets X and Y to 20 and 180. Sets J to 0. And we're going to go around a loop on I again for I of 0. And down here to 5, one at a time. Well, that's similar to what we did up there. But now it says make the color a darker brown, 210, and do a box R, box the rectangle. See, it's going to make a rectangle for every one of the words. Instead of making one big brown rectangle and then boxing the words, it's going to make separate rectangles for each word. Then it makes the color 990, which is yellow. And here it's going to hold the value of X in H. That's because down here it's going to use text. When it does text, if there aren't vertical bars at the end of the text, it's going to have to go by this value of 6. But it doesn't know whether it's supposed to add the value of X for the width of this. In other words, on the screen, if I did text 1 and then text 2, it would move over for doing the text 1. But we don't want the value of X to change, and the only way we can do that is to save the value of X here. But then the next two are the same as before. It's going to add a little bit to X to move it to the right, and a little bit to Y to move it down, so the text will be inside the box. But as soon as the box is made, it puts X back to the value it was before, and subtracts the 26 that it added to Y to put Y back to its position. In other words, it's back to the upper left-hand corner of the rectangle. Then it adds 6 to J, as it has to do every time it goes around. So first it'll be 1, and then it'll be 2. And then it adds 115 to the value of X. That's the move over to do the next rectangle. But if it's the second rectangle, well, then we got to move back to the beginning again. So it says sets X back to 20, but it drops down a row to 34. And that's the end of this loop. Well, now we know in this loop, this box R, which is box the rectangle, it's been assigned clickable area 21 plus the value of I. Well, then it's going to be 21, 22, 23, and then it'll be 24, 25, and 26 on the other row. Well, let's go back to execute and see if that's true. Well, if I click this 1, well, it's 21, 22, click 23, click 4, it's 24, 5 is 25, and 6 it's 26. So now we learned we can box the text and make that clickable, or we can box each one of the separate rectangles and make it clickable. Now I'm going to advance the task value to 1. Here is another clickable area, but let's first go to Program and learn about it. Well, when task is a 1, it's going to go to CA, and here we are in CA. Now it sets tall and wide to 6335, XY position to 20 and 80. Sets the color to a brown color. Does a rectangle fill, and does a box R clickable as 31. Then it does the color 990, which is yellow. Adds a little bit to X and a little bit of Y. We know it's going to put some text in there. And here we see that same thing as before, sets J to 0. And then for I of 0, and now here's next I, 5, 1, just like we had before. It's going to put some text into the box that it made. But when we're going around it, it's not making anything inside the box clickable. In fact, it just goes here and says, put text into the box. Well, first time, J0, it's going to be 1. J is going to change by 6 each time. Here we see it. The next time it'll be 2, then it'll be 3, so forth. And it has the same logic that once it gets to the second one, when it's going to go to the next one, it's going to set X back to the beginning again and add 30 to Y. Well, it's just putting the text inside that box. Nothing was clickable. And here, if we execute it, we'll see what it did. It first made this box, and it said the box was clickable. Not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as either text or a separate rectangle, but the whole box is clickable. Well, let's go back to the program and read on. Well, the next thing it says, after it went around and put the text in there, it says collect 31. Collect says equal. The E stands for equal. If 31 has been clicked, and up here we learned that that's the number of this new brown box, 31. If that has not been clicked, it's going to go to CG down here. But if it has been clicked, it's going to go to this routine here. First thing it's going to do, if it's been clicked, it says, I want to mat that click. And it has what? Well, let's go to this thing. I'll click on that. Here's the instruction up here. Mat the matrix cell number. It's going to put into C, and it's going to say here the number of columns is 3, and the number of rows is 2. Oh, well, that's the way the text is in the box. There's 3 columns, 2 rows. Well, now I can quit that. So that's what this mat statement means. So that value of Z is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the very next thing it does to C is it adds 101 to it. So it's really going to be 101, 102, 103, and so forth. And it also does a stat on the status line to show it had been clicked. And then, whether it was clicked or not, it comes down here. If C was 0, it goes to CH here. But if not, it does what it did above. It sets X to 400, Y to 170, and does a box N of the number, but this time 5 digits in size, not a clickable value, and show us the value of C. Well, let's execute this thing. Alright, now we're going to click on the 1. It says 101. Remember, we added 101 to it. Actually, the mat statement gave it a value of 0 for this position, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we added 101 to it. I wanted to be able to make it go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Although that's not what the clickable values are. Matter of fact, if I go up here in data and click data, it'll show me the only clickable is 31. We still have our 1, and this is 31. But look, the other clickable areas that we had put in here for task 0 are no longer here. Why? Because when it changed task number, what did it do? It erased all clickable areas. All right, we'll go away from data. This is task 1. Now we're going to click next task to go to number 2. Here is number 2. We're going to go to the program to see what it's doing. First, it sets the value of k to 0, value of L to 0, and then for I of 10, and down here we see it changes it by 10 until it gets to 20. Well, it's only going to be 10 or 20. Then inside that loop it has a for j of 1, and then j goes to 5, changing 1 at a time, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas I just goes 10, 20. Well, the next thing it says is sum the two values at I. I only threw that in here because I could have said add I and j together to make t, but I'd have to have 2 lines in order to do that, so I thought I'd be tricky, and I would just say I know that I and j are contiguous in memory, and if I tell it to sum the two things starting at I, it's going to add I and j together and put the value into t. I threw a little something in there to make it tricky. Then the next thing says set at value plus k, and k 0, the value of t, but then add 1 to k. So every time it goes around here, it's going to put the value in a different part of value, value plus k. Then it does a numd on t and puts it in this text page, text, offset L. Well, L started at 0, but now this text it says here, it's going to advance that 5 each time. And then it's going to end the loop. So you wonder what the heck is it doing here? Well, we can go down here to list values, and we can click on value, and it'll show us that here is value 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, then 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Now it's actually only going to show these first 3 and this second 3. It's going to show 11, 12, 13, 21, 22, 23, only to indicate that the first one is row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2, column 3, and then row 2, column 1, row 2, column 2, row 2, column 3. That's what those numbers are for. And it also put them in the text area. So I'm going to end this, and I'm going to go to page text. And here's the page called text. I'll click on that. And sure enough, there they are also. There's 11, 12, 13 are the ones we're going to use, and 21, 22, and 23. Now we've ended that box, and we're going to come down here, and it's going to set X to 50, Y to 100, put a font bold 20 points, and then it's going to show up a matrix box here, where L is the offset between the rows, and for numbers it's going to be offset 5. Remember, I spaced these out as if the matrix was 3 by 5. So it would be 5 to get to the next row, but actually we're only using the first 3 values, so it's really 3 by 3. But also here we're going to say the value for M is 5, the value for N is 2, and then we're going to do a box N, tell it that it's a matrix type box, and here's its dimensions, and we're going to say it is not clickable at 0, show us the values. Then we're going to come down here and do it for the text part. And we're going to say there L is 25, there's 25 characters per line or row, and M and N are still 5 and 2, and then we're going to box it as text. Well, let's see what that means. I'm going to execute it. It's these two up here. First it shows them as numbers, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 21 to 25. But this over here is actually text. It's just to show you that we can box N and box T. One is numeric, the other is text. Go back to the program. Oh, and maybe I want to show you, by the way, if I go to data, none of that was clickable. So it does not show up as something clickable. Notice they were up here on the top. Nothing is showing there as clickable. Even though they were assigned click numbers, only if they could be updated. And if they can be updated, they're marked in orange like down here. None of these were marked in orange. So it was just displaying the values here and the text here, but it's not clickable, it's not updatable. We go back to the program. Well, now we did those two boxes. Well, now it sets X and Y to 15 to 30. 230 is much further down on the page. A font 423. The L, the distance between the values, is 5 because there's 5 on a row, even though now we're going to show it as 3 by 3. The rows and the columns both 3. And then it says here, show it again as a matrix called matrix A. And it is clickable. It's given click number 41. It then says we're going to add sum to X and we're going to show matrix B. We didn't have to redo L, M, and N again. They're still the same values. Then again, it says now though, it wants to add 1,000 to the value of N. That's to tell it that the next instruction, multiply list, is a matrix instruction. That it's going to multiply matrix A by matrix B, giving matrix C. Then it adds 345 to X, and then it shows matrix C. Well, let's see what it's doing. Let's go back to executing it. Now we see these are clickable, and when I go to data, we see they've been assigned click numbers because they're updatable boxes. None of the other boxes were updatable, even though they were box N and box T. These are the ones that said they were also updatable. So here we see that identity matrix that it made. Here we see the random values it got from the computer's list of random digits. And here is the answer of the multiplication. So this is matrix A, matrix B, and matrix C. Well, this is the identity matrix, so we know when that's multiplied by something, we just get that something right back again. But if we can update these, so that 1, I could make a 2. Well, I have to go get my keyboard, and I will make it a 2. I made it a 2. Basically, all it did is multiply this first row by 2, because over here now is 10, 2, and 10, and that's the only row it make any changes to. Well, what we can do here now is change any of these values. I can make that one a 2, and I also can make that one a 2, and we instantly see, oh, he made it a 21. I'll try and make it a 2. 2. So here we can show you how to do matrix multiplication by 3 matrix. But you can take this program and copy it and make the size whatever you want. Of course, when you get really big, you have to make the size of these fonts smaller. But there you go. This is box N, box T. Here's matrix multiplication. And what we wanted to learn here, if we click data, only when it said it was clickable did it get assigned these numbers. But you got to, that doesn't mean that if I click on 41, I'm going to get an answer that says you click 41. The box N and box T don't do that. But they do allow you to update those boxes. All right. This is the end of this video on clickables.